As we mentioned earlier in the show, the House Intel Committee just voted unanimously to present, to show the Democrats' memo. Of course, we've seen the Republicans' memo a couple days ago, but now the Democrats will get their chance if the White House allows.
It's interesting because a week ago, there were Republicans who as part of our very own State of the Union coverage, and we said, look, if you're going to release the Republican memo, should you release the Democratic memo? And they said, yeah, we probably should after we look at and see whether there are any classified information that should be protected. But now they have voted to do that, and it is up to the president to respond. The president, at least on Twitter earlier, suggested that Adam Schiff was a leaker and a liar and not to be believed. Maybe it's part of the effort by the president to undercut what the Democratic memo will put out there, but nonetheless, you feel like, well, why not release it?
Especially when all the Republicans on the committee have voted to release it. So even if he's attacking Schiff, those Republicans still say that memo needs to be released and the American public should get to see from both sides so they get a complete picture. I think that's the point. Transparency from all sides, from the Republicans and the Democrats, and then the Americans can make their mind up.
And all of this is whether, making their minds up about the genesis of the Russia investigation. The Republicans, a lot of them want to have people believe that this began because of a research dossier that was compiled on behalf of the Clinton campaign, and that therefore this was tainted from the beginning, this allegation that President Trump or some of his staff may have been colluding with the Russians. The Democrats are arguing, no, wait a second, there were intelligence and surveillance separate of the Steele dossier that prompted the FBI in July of 2016 to begin a counterintelligence review. And then, of course, there's the question of, well, but if the Republicans are right and this was malfeasance at the top of the FBI and the Justice Department, does that possibly taint Robert Mueller, who was, of course, appointed by Rod Rosenstein, the very guy who signed off on this memo? So
we didn't say it was not uncomplicated. But stick with us because we've got terrific guests who are going to explain their point of view and make this easy to understand for all of you.
So let's ask Carl Jeffers, who joins us now. Carl, would you agree with Tom's point, and that is, why not have the FBI release the underlying data, the underlying information about this intelligence, never mind what the Democrats and how they may categorize this other information other than the dossier?
I don't have a problem with the FBI evaluating anything. Unlike our leaders, it seems to me today, I have faith in the institutions of the American government far more so than they seem to, and they seem to have deferred to the Russians and giving them more credibility than to our own government. So I have no problem with the FBI. And let's point out here that if you want to go all the way back on the funding of that dossier, that originally it was the Republicans who in fact brought in these consultants and brought in Steele, and later the Democrats and certainly Hillary Clinton, they became involved. The point is that's been a political football from both sides, and the judge also knew that there was political motivation in the dossier, and still he saw enough there with the additional information provided by the FBI to the FISA court to decide to issue the surveillance order.
Tom, your response to that the Republicans initially brought in Christopher Steele, that it was the Republicans who brought in
I don't believe they brought in Christopher Steele. I believe they funded Fusion GPS, one political organization, to do op research on all the candidates. It was the DNC and Hillary Clinton that then went and got the foreign British individual.
But what's wrong, even if it's tainted? I mean, the law enforcement every day.
That's exactly my point. Why does no Republican ever mention the fact that it started with the Republicans bringing
at this point, sir, it's irrelevant.
Which you just pointed out.
I want to pick up right there, though, because it is irrelevant, but it's not irrelevant. What I think is irrelevant is every day, and I'll start, Tom, with you, every day the FBI uses information based on snitches, based on drug dealers, based on criminals, based on people who have already perjured themselves. So why should it matter that this person might have had a political bent against Donald Trump?
It matters a bit because he himself said he had an agenda, one. But two, even more important, and to your point, it's the underlying data that he got. From what I understand, it was the dossier was based on hearsay, third-party information, and that was never vetted by the FBI. And that is a real problem, because that shows that they may have actually had their finger on the scale of justice.
But it was only in the scale of justice in terms of seeking a warrant. I mean, Carl Jeffers, correct me if I'm wrong, but would the FBI been able to get a renewal on this had it not been producing some valuable intelligence from Carter Page, the person who was the subject of this warrant?
Well, and by the way, my guest is not used to any compliments, apparently, so I was actually complimenting him for even acknowledging that it was Republicans who brought it in first, because no other Republicans even seem willing to do that, even though it's a fact. Now, with regard to the FISA renewal, and that's an excellent point, David, without question, not only was there a requirement for a demonstration of evidence that was found as a result of the original surveillance order, but in this case, they renewed the FISA order on Carter Page 3 more times after the original one. And each time, the FBI had to now not only demonstrate that there was a probable cause for going forward with the surveillance, but they also had to show that there was productive evidence as a result of the previous FISA surveillance order.
And yet they found nothing.
In order to justify further. And they did that 3 times.
And at the most important aspect of what you just said, they found nothing. Carter Page has not been indicted. Well, he hasn't been indicted.
Oh, no. You don't know that at all.
Well,
that's right.
It's been over a year. We haven't seen any evidence of collusion.
Can I just step in here for a second? Sure. Memo this, memo that. This committee was supposed to investigate Russia's meddling in our election. How did we get to this, fighting about who's putting up their finger on the scale? The Democrats, the Republicans, we're infighting, and Russia is just laughing at us.
Well, absolutely, because our political system, people are so polarized and people looking to make political advantage. But again, the ones who really started was Hillary Clinton's campaign funding a foreign agent.
That, but here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. Tom, if Robert Mueller, regardless of what he comes back with, will you respect what Robert Mueller's findings are at the end of his investigation?
I'm highly skeptical of him, his motivations, and the team he's put together.
All right,
I'll wait to see the data.
That's a no. Carl Jeffers, I assume that you're going to accept whatever Bob Mueller does?
Not only will I accept it, but it's impossible for anyone not to accept it when here's a man who served a full 10-year term as the FBI director, and then President Obama.
And he has a conflict of interest because him and Comey used to be buddies. Come on.
All right, we'll have to see what happens when he comes back with that report.
Yeah,
thank you both.
He served 2 more years when the vote in the Senate was 100-0 to confirm him for an additional 2-year term. That's the kind of credibility he has.
All right, Carl, you got the last word. We're going to end it here. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on and for debating this.
Terrific stuff.